Well. Hello. We're back on our Wellness Wednesday. And my name is Dr. Sherry Ann McCoy. I'm a naturopathic doctor, licensed spiritual healer, and a certified Bible counselor. And I'm also the owner of Redbird Natural Healing in Plano, Texas. And this is Carrie Martin Vegue, and she's a traditional naturopath, and she's also a licensed spiritual healer. And she also happens to be one of my dearest, wonderful friends. So we always love to be on here and talk to you about lots of things. And one of the things you will know about Carrie is she really undermines herself a little bit because she's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. She reads more than I do, way more than I do, and she retains a lot more than I do too. So that's her youth over me. So it's good to be back with you. We've been out for a couple of weeks for lots of different reasons, actually. So our goal in our Wellness Wednesday is to come on every week, and hopefully we will come on live at some point and be able to really interact with you. But for now, it's just going to be pre-recorded so that we can get it out to you. So where we left off for the month of October was talking about menopause, and what our goal was on our next session to talk about andropause. So that's kind of where we're going to pick up. We won't talk a whole lot about it, but we do think that it's a subject that still needs to be discussed. And when we talk about menopause, that is typically something that um, women my age begin to talk about. And what I think I've said before is that I went into menopause like after a trauma. So very immediately after a trauma, and had absolutely no symptoms whatsoever. And then now in my 50s, I started having more. And I believe no medical doctor has told me this, but I believe that it's because I had gotten healthier. And so my hormones are now saying, oh, this is how we're supposed to behave. And so there are times that I really wish that they would just be quiet for a little bit because, not having that and then having it is a little bit different. But it's been an interesting thing. So when we're talking about andropause, I know a lot of people may think, what the heck is that? It's basically male menopause. So menopause and andropause both start from the same place, but one from the female's body and one from the male body. So those start in the ovaries for a woman and the testicles for a man. So as we start talking about that, Carrie, why don't you explain, since you're the kind of the hormone guru, why don't you explain to us more about really what the purpose of the ovaries and the testicles are?
Yeah, so basically, kind of going back to like why our bodies and how our bodies produce hormones is it's actually first controlled by our brains
Mhm.
and pituitary gland. And so our brain and pituitary gland, specifically our hypothalamus, releases a hormone called gonadotropin releasing hormone, which causes your pituitary gland to release luteinizing hormone. In females, that's what prepares your ovary to get ready for ovulation. In men,
And so say that, that hormone slowly so they can understand what you said.
it's
What what
the
it's called.
hypothalamus releases gonadotropin releasing hormone, and I hope I
Wait,
pronounced that correctly, which causes your pituitary gland to release a luteinizing hormone.
right.
Then luteinizing hormones goes to ovaries for a female, testicles for a male. And that's what causes the luteinizing hormone causes ovulation, really, and really the surges of estrogen and progesterone are tied to that. Also testosterone, because women also have testosterone. In the males, the luteinizing hormone goes to the testicles. The testicles produce several different hormones, the biggest one being testosterone. And so I mentioned that because what's the purpose of the ovaries and testicles? They produce hormones that keep us functioning well, but it's more than just our ovaries and our testicles. It's our brain as well and our pituitary glands.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is like our next subject in our next wellness workshop is about diabetes,
Yes.
and the ovaries have something to do with that too, don't they?
Yes.
And how
Yes.
is that?
Well, and partly because when we have too much sugar in our bodies, we become insulin resistant, which causes a lot of issues for both male and females. And in females, when we become insulin resistant, it's our body often responds by with different diagnoses such as PCOS, too many cysts, those kinds of
Right.
things, which then kind of snowballs into other hormonal issues.
Right. And I've always thought that was very interesting. And we're kind of getting off topic just a little bit, but I think it's a good thing to think about too, because insulin resistance ends up causing weight gain, and then that weight gain ends up causing more estrogen, over estrogen, right? Estrogen dominance, and then
Which stresses our liver.
uh, right, ends up going with our liver, and you just all kinds of things. And I said to Carrie, oh, I probably won't say this, but I probably will, so I'm going to say it. So we were talking about different things like that, that how many myths there are about specific things out in the world, and some people believe them to be fact. Some people think, okay, well, that's enough of something that it could be possibly true. So the thing that Carrie asked me was, in a group that she's in, she read that we really shouldn't go through menopause. And so we talked about that. And so I want to bring that conversation here. And the first thing I want to say about that is, she asked me how I felt about that. And I said, I think our bodies are supposed to go through that. Maybe not have the big symptoms that we have, but we do have it. But I was
Or
one.
happen as early, because we see a lot of women now going through perimenopause at a much earlier age than
Right.
we should be.
Right, absolutely. I mean, and I went through menopause early because of a trauma, but I
Mhm,
also think because of that trauma, I mean, it kind of is like which one happened first.
mhm,
My trauma was, a virus attacking my heart, and so then had to get a pacemaker, and then how that pulls together hormones is a long explanation that we won't talk about here, but it still goes back to nutrition, it goes back to emotions, it goes back to lots of
mhm,
things. And so, what I was saying, and Carrie said, and liver, and we both smiled because one of the things I said to her was, I never understood that having a heavy period meant that you really have a liver issue. I mean, I was shocked whenever I learned that. And because I was diagnosed with PCOS, I I thought, excuse me, I thought, oh, well, that's just part of it,
mhm,
that's just a thing. But then when PCOS has an interesting history in it of itself too, because before it was called PCOS, it was called Stein-Leventhal syndrome, and that's by Dr. Stein and Dr. Leventhal, German doctors, that discovered that there are some women that have more cysts on their ovaries, and then this causes ovulation issues, it causes period issues, it causes all these, and it can cause miscarriages, it can cause infertility. They discovered that. And when I was in my teens, that's what I was diagnosed with. But then come forward probably 10 or maybe even 15 years later. I'm trying to think how old I was when they stopped calling it that and started calling it PCOS. Then they started saying, oh, well, it's really polycystic ovarian syndrome. However, what do you call it when men are experiencing that? You
mhm,
don't call it polycystic ovarian syndrome because they don't have ovaries, right? And they don't
mhm,
have cysts on their ovaries. And they also don't typically end up having cysts in their testicles either. What they do have is insulin resistance,
mhm,
right? And so that has an overall a different symptom there, and that can also be in families. So again, that'll be something that we talk about next as well. So it really is kind of interesting. The biggest thing that men the kind of the gold standard of how men are diagnosed with andropause is they if their testosterone is lower by 2% of what the average is of what their average is. But most men don't get their testosterone checked in their youth,
mhm,
right? Women will be more apt to get their progesterone or their estrogen checked during that time, but men don't usually do that. But lower testosterone can begin as early as age 45. And I've seen a couple of men actually recently that are in their 30s that have very low testosterone. And so, Carrie, when we talked about that, about what that are we supposed to have menopause? Um, what did you say that when I said, I don't really think so? I think we're supposed to have menopause. And you said it could be because of what?
What did I say? Diet?
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, diet. Because I think I'm actually reading a really good book right now. Just talking about how our diet, because we all have our genes that tell us how our body should express things, right? And there used to be some, and this is just like super superficial. There used to be a lot of parts of DNA that they refer to as junk DNA,
Hmm.
but now they're starting to realize that ties into genetics, which we're going to be talking about a little bit more this week and next. But anyway, but how much of our nutrition we put in our bodies tells that junk DNA how to express themselves. And so, really, I've been deep diving more into nutrition and really just how what we eat, I mean, impacts. I'm really love seeing how it impacts hormones, but it impacts everything because what we're eating is telling our genes what path they should be taking. And it's just so cool.
It really is very interesting. And I said, then you have to, if like for me, I do think that our bodies are designed to go through that. Are, are they designed to have the difficulties that we have? Probably not.
Mhm.
They just do. And the reason they do is because of our environment, because of our epigenetics, because of what we eat, because of the toxins that we put in. And then I'll go ahead and open up another can of worms. What Carrie's talking about is we have this blueprint of what our body or our DNA can do. And then we enter some different toxins, and then our body doesn't have the response that we thought it was going to have because it happens to everybody or it doesn't happen to anybody, one way or the other. We look at it that way. And then we get this negative response. And that negative response that we see now in our culture is many, many, many children having autism or on spectrum, or we have children that have major, major allergy issues that never had it before. In if you're in your young 30s, and Carrie, you may still be in this category. Carrie's in her young 30s, but I'm thinking like 28, 29 to I think about 32, 33. There was one specific immunization that happened during that period of time that made a lot of children allergic to peanuts or peanut oils.
Oh, yeah.
And so that is so the thought process of this, and I'm not saying it is one way or another, it's just something to think about. But the thought process of that is that their blueprint is one thing, and then introduce this toxin that is in that, and then it made the outcome that their body can't tolerate peanut oil or peanuts. And
Mhm.
so all of those poor children can't eat the MSG sugar laden Chick-fil-A. So, you know, because it's made in peanut oil.
Right, and then to build on it a little bit, I mean, some people today are their reaction is so strong to peanuts. That's why airlines no longer serve peanuts,
Right, right,
just because that peanut dust is enough to really like, I mean, we're
right,
talking life and death. So kind of just the ripple effects of how
right.
our diet, nutrition can impact us personally, our families, and society at large.
Right. Yeah. And that's a whole other topic. I mean, so we're talking about a lot of different things here. I had a student that was allergic to peanuts and had an anaphylaxis reaction in my classroom. Thankfully, we carried an EpiPen ourselves, so I knew how to give her an Epi shot and call her mom and all that kind of stuff. And you would think, since I knew how to do it and I was already prepared, I wouldn't be scared. But man, I was scared. Because you hope that it's going to work and all of the things, but it's scary when anybody goes through something like that. So going back to that's so interesting, and literally these are the kind of conversations Carrie and I have, is that we start on one subject and go,
And we
but
just
what
go
about this
all
and
over the board.
this and yeah. So someone told me today that there's a friend of mine that is a microbiologist, and he actually teaches medical doctors, and he has some chickens that actually have a virus right now that they will now be dissecting to study this virus. And I said, can I come to that class? Because I think that would be just so exciting. He says it's very nerdy. I'm like, that would be me.
Yeah.
Right? I want to know all the things. So let's go back. Let's bring it back in and go
Okay.
back to menopause and andropause.
Okay.
So, Carrie, I said that the number one thing about andropause is that testosterone lowering by 2%. That's not very much.
No.
Makes me wonder, even because progesterone and estrogen kind of goes in it. I mean, goes up and
Right.
down through the month. I would imagine that same thing happens with men. I know testosterone is higher in the
Yep.
morning than it is in the afternoon, so or in the evening. So that would be interesting to see that.
Yes.
Um, but anyway, so what are the signs or symptoms of andropause or menopause?
Yes, that's a good question. So we get a lot of there's kind of a lot that kind of goes into it, but we're talking things like men might feel have more mood swings, uh, like what we typically associate with like PMS, those kind of things, that kind of emotional stuff, like depression. They can also get night sweats and things like that. They can struggle with insomnia, weight gain, bone loss. So we tend to think of osteoporosis as like a female thing, and it does tend to impact women in menopause more frequently. But men can also have bone loss. I think a big thing is when testosterone gets really low, we're talking about lower sex drive and even erectile dysfunction. So less energy, that kind of thing.
Right. And with low testosterone, also they tend to lose muscle mass. So
Yes.
if it stays low for a very long time. Now, the other thing that I want you to understand too, though, is that just because a man's testosterone is lower, or you think that it is andropause or menopause, if there's an erectile dysfunction issue, don't just assume that it's hormonal, because it can also be nitric oxide. It can be
Yes.
different uh, blockages that they may have. So it's very vascular. It's a very vascular issue. Even higher cholesterol levels can actually cause erectile dysfunction. So those are things to actually think about. And while women will go into the doctor and get those things checked pretty quick, where men are embarrassed by it and they won't go get it checked. And so it can end up being an issue that's truly life or death. So don't just assume, oh, I'm getting older, or I'm too worried, or I'm having a hard time at work. Go get that checked, because your medical doctors are not going to be embarrassed by it. They've already dealt with it multiple times, and there can be something that can help you, and that not be an issue. So, when we're talking about andropause and even menopause, one of the things and the best thing is to go right back to diet, right? So, what kind of diet does that look like, Carrie?
Well, kind of leading into our whole diabetes awareness month,
Right?
one of the biggest things that we see impact, well, there's several, but one of the big ones is sugar. And a lot of clients will come into us and they'll be like, I really don't eat that much sugar. And then when we start asking them, we'll give us a typical day and things of that nature. Then we start pointing out to them how much sugar is hidden into things, or things like pastas, bread. I mean, typical breakfast foods were are higher carb. Um, People you tend to prefer fruits over vegetables. That's higher sugar content. So just things like that. But that can like bringing dialing back our sugar intake can just really have a positive impact on our hormone levels.
Oh,
Whether
major.
it's like before menopause, perimenopause, menopause, andropause, all the time, dialing back the sugar. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sugar is a huge aspect of that. And then also making sure to get enough fiber and the amount of protein. Some people think that we don't get enough protein. Some people think we eat more protein than we need, and it really, you're really going to have to look at it. When people are kind of carbaholics, they tend to not get enough protein. And if they had enough protein, then they wouldn't be eating as many carbs. And the reason why is because protein satiates you more. And so when they're hungry, they reach for something that may have some protein in it. Typically, it usually just has fat in it. or that it classifies in that category instead. So some people will reach for peanut butter crackers, and that's carb and fat. It's not protein. It's really not food. And you want to think about your food being nutrient dense. The other thing you want to make sure of is that you are getting enough exercise, walking, moving your body. If there is a vascular issue, the walking is obviously going to help. Making sure you get enough water so that your blood volume can be up. If you have really low blood pressure, then you're probably not getting enough water because your volume is coming from there. You need to make sure that you're peeing right.
Mhm.
And I said this probably 3 times this last week. Your pee is not supposed to be clear. Your pee is not supposed to be clear. But we've heard, I know in my generation, you drink water until it's clear.
Mhm.
But what happens in there, that means that you have no minerals left
Right.
because you have drank so much water that you're overcompensating and your body's not holding it onto it.
Right.
So, that can be an issue as well. And then
And just
again,
really quick, like with the minerals, I mean, when you remember that it's your brain going to the pituitary, going to your ovaries or testicles, like for the brain and the nervous system to work, you need the minerals because it's the minerals that spark the electricity that allows our nervous system to work. And so
right.
that's why paying attention to your pee color and if you have the minerals is so critical with hormones is because you need your brain to communicate with your ovaries or testicles.
Right. It's all connected, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all connected, and we can't ignore one because of another. And so that's why I'm a naturopath that says it's okay to integrate medical Western medicine because it can literally save your life sometimes. I mean, I've been I was going to say the victim. I don't mean that I've been the victim of that. I actually was the recipient of doctors saving my life on 3 different occasions. And so I'm very grateful for those doctors specifically. Very, very grateful for them. And I also now on this side of it can still look back on that and say, I'm very grateful that I had them. And now I know things that I can do better for myself and also for my clients. So it's important for you to know here that we are not treating, diagnosing, or prescribing, but what we are doing is educating yourself as well as ourselves. We're educating and then we're giving you that empowerment to be your own health advocate. And then the good thing with us is that you get to be encouraged by us walking right alongside of you if you're going through a health crisis or you're just wanting to get better overall and do that kind of thing. So that I think that's really good. I this is a really good conversation to have. And
Mhm.
then this kind of leads us in as we close. It leads us into something that Carrie and I are working on right
If
now.
I can just say one more thing before you wrap
Sure.
up. Sharon kind of glossed over this really quickly about fiber. And the reason why fiber is so important, and you would be shocked. People come into the office and we ask them, "How often do you poop?" And people don't poop. And
No.
ideally, the best thing is you should like in your brain to kind of give you an idea. You should if you eat, you should poop. So 2 to 3 times a day, right?
Mhm.
And so that's the thing is fiber helps you poop. And the reason why that's so important is because the liver helps to process um, hormones. When the hormones get out of your system, they go to the liver. The liver is supposed to process them out, and you're supposed to poop them out. And if you're not pooping, the hormones get like hormones that shouldn't be in your system are being recycled, and so then we have an imbalance going on there. So that's why fiber is so important.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. And that is so important. And I always say that if you're not pooping, you're carrying your trash around. Why would you want to do that? So that's kind of gross. Okay, so going back to some of the things that Carrie and I are working on right now is we are working on kind of a membership that is not necessarily a membership where you have to come in for a consult or you have to come work with us every month or even services. Excuse me, we have those things. We have wellness memberships and we have service memberships. What we're working on now really is something that is a situation kind of like this. You would be in a group where you have the classes that we've already taught, that you have those at your beck and call with some of our protocols. You have files that we are going to put up there. And then we're entertaining the aspect of once a month having like an online thing where you can interact here. So you can come in, you can ask your questions. We will interact with you. It'll be one of us or both of us, or something like that. But then something else that we've kind of thought about is because we're both in a group, or both in a organization that does this, where once a week you're just on for 15-20 minutes, and there's questions that have been asked, and we just are on. You're watching, you can interact through chatting, like in that live video or something, and we just answer your questions that way. And so those would be recorded, and they would be back in that group, and so that you could watch the replay on that. So that would be a minimal cost. It would give you a lot of things. It would probably give you discounts for other things that we offer, and that kind of thing. So if you're interested in something like that, this would be something that would be available to you all over the world, because I know that we've got people from Australia, people from Canada, Scotland. I'm leaving somebody out. South Africa, and other places that talk to us and interact with us. So it would be something that would be available for anybody. So if you're interested in that, let us know, because we want to hear the feedback from you so that we'll know more about how we can really make this work specifically for your needs. Okay. So we will leave you at that, and we'll be back next week for the next part coming into November and talking about diabetes awareness. So thanks for joining me, Kathy, whoever Kathy is. Thanks, Kathy. Thank you, Carrie, for joining me. I always enjoy it, and we could make this go on and on and on, but we will stop here. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys next time.